Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Drive for Life. I'm your host, Brian Martindale, and again, we've got another special episode tonight. Another fine author, someone involved in kidney donation and being a kidney recipient, and just a whole lot of things to tell you about. We're with Jean Sime today. Jean, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to give you just a short introduction. Jean was diagnosed with chronic kidney disease and spent 3.5 years on hemodialysis. And then in 2019, she received her gift of life from a kind, selfless, living donor who's also a nurse. Since then, she's been very passionate for organ donation, and she now helps authors make their dreams come true as a way of giving back. She's assisted in proofreading, illustration, direction, marketing, and branding, and been a co-author of 3 books: Because of Organ Donation, Voices 19, and How is Thankful for Kidney Donation. So, Jean, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Brian.
You're very welcome. I want to start the show with finding out who is Jean Sime, and we'll get to all the great things you've been doing.
Wonderful. So, as you mentioned, I am Jean Sime. I live here in Northwest New Jersey with my husband, and my life totally changed when I was diagnosed with chronic kidney disease. It was something that I knew could have happened to me because my mom was also on dialysis way back when. Okay. But it could be denial. It could be, you're superior to things happening to you. And also, if you don't go to the doctor, you can't be diagnosed that you're actually sick. So right. I think it was a part of many of those different things. But in the end, in 2015, I was diagnosed with chronic kidney disease, as you mentioned. Mm-hmm. And my whole world was flipped upside down, just as so many other warriors out there. If you've never experienced it before, I hope you never, ever have to, because the word warrior is the appropriate word for it. It's definitely not for the weak, for sure.
Absolutely.
And I was diagnosed, and I chose in-center hemodialysis because for me, it was more of a controlled environment. I didn't have to worry about if there was an emergency at home. I was there with the nurses, the doctors. They came in for the routine visits as well. So I just felt comfortable. Even though I was still working at that time, I was the vice president in a major financial institution. Okay. I had many employees reporting to me as well. So I was doing dialysis and center hemodialysis as well as working full time, which was a task in itself, because people say, well, how could you work and do dialysis at the same time? I didn't even think of it. It was just something that I knew I had to do because dialysis was something new for me. I had no idea, even though my mom was on it. That was many, many years ago, and it was a little different than it is now.
Yes, it is.
And, when you're going through it yourself, it's different than watching someone else go through it.
Right.
And I must say, for the first 6 months that I was on dialysis, I was in a deep funk. Let's put it that way. They don't talk about the emotional side of dialysis, the depression, the fear that you have. How am I going to have a normal life again? Right. What about the bills that are going to incur, the hospital expenses, and how am I going to work and keep my job and pay bills and things like that? When here I am plugged literally into a machine that's saving my life 3 times a week. Right. So it took me a while to grasp it and understand it and to accept it. I think I was in denial at that point, and I didn't tell anyone. Obviously my immediate family knew. My boss had to know because I had to leave work early on those 3 days. Sure. I didn't even share with my friends. It wasn't that I was embarrassed or anything. It was just I didn't want people to feel sorry for me.
Yeah, I get that from a lot of dialysis patients and transplant patients. Yes.
Yeah. And it took me about 6 months before I accepted it and said, you know what, I can live this life and be miserable, or I can accept it.
Right.
Thank goodness they have this machine to keep me alive,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Absolutely.
And I can go on and try to live the best life that I can live, despite this situation. And that's what I chose to do.
Yeah. You made the
And
best out of the worst.
yeah, and it for everyone, their journey is different. And
Mhm.
for me, it was something that I had to comprehend, and I had to, get a handle on it myself.
Yeah, because even though we're Kidneys for Kids in Michigan, we have a program that we're helping adults like you, get to finding a living kidney donor as well as with financial assistance. And I hear, especially from the adults, the mental side of the stress and everything. We have a particular adult who was on the show recently, who's the first adult we were helping in Michigan. And her telling her story about seeing a therapist regularly because of the anxiety. And she has a person that's with her, who's with her in the TV interview, and other things she does, because right now her dialysis is taking so much out of her that she can't work. And for you to be the warrior and go through working and everything, not many people can do that, and whether they want to or not.
Right.
So, I mean, God bless you for pushing through and being so strong. But I mean, it's 3.5 years of this before you got to the point of finding your ending point. And tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I must admit I was not proactive. I was just trying to get through day to day. And back then, 2015, I think I might have just started on Facebook. There were no support groups out there. I couldn't find anything, let's put it that way. And I was on my own, besides the nurses and the techs at the dialysis center. I wasn't proactive looking for a living donor. I had set in my mind that if someone chose to donate to me, and God forbid something happened to them, and I survived and they passed during surgery, I don't know how I would go on. So that was the fear that was in my mind.
Okay.
And I was just going day to day, honestly. And when we talk about at the end of our interview, that will definitely be something that I will stress is for those waiting to be proactive. Don't just wait.
Yeah, don't just wait. Yeah.
And I was just waiting, honestly, for my miracle to happen. And I was sick. I was working and I was on dialysis, and dialysis takes a toll on you. And in the beginning, it wasn't too bad because I was getting all those toxins taken out of me. Right. So I actually felt better after. But once, you're getting into the routine of things, it truly just
takes a load out of you.
Sucks the life out of you.
Right.
No pun intended.
Right. Yeah.
And it was really hard to just function day to day, never mind worrying and thinking about how am I going to find somebody to save my life? How do you ask someone to save your life?
Question. Exactly.
How worthy am I to ask someone to save my life?
Right.
So,
and so many people feel that way. And that's one thing we're trying to, in stressing the safety of kidney donation. Now, you said you were worried. Okay, somebody donates to me and God forbid something happens to them in that situation. Yeah, and then we'll talk a little bit more about after the commercial break about the safety of kidney donation and then somebody coming forward for you. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back with more of this episode of Drive for Life.
Hi, I'm Andrea Weissman, National Spokesperson for Kidneys for Kids. As a living kidney donor myself, I know how a transplant can be both life-saving and transformative for a child and their family. Our mission at Kidneys for Kids is to educate adults how they can share their healthy kidney with a child and give them new life. Each summer, we travel coast to coast leveraging the power of television in order to recruit compassionate people just like you who are willing to donate their kidney. We also offer financial support for the families who are in treatment that may not be covered by insurance. We can only sustain this mission with your generous support. Whether it be as an individual or a business, your tax-deductible donation can be made at kidneysforkids.org. We thank you so much for your support. We know that we are changing lives of children and their family. Thank you.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Drive for Life. Again, I'm your host, Brian Martindale. This week, we're enjoying our visit with Jean Sime. And Jean, let's continue our conversation. We're going to touch on the mental aspect of what somebody goes through being a dialysis patient. Take it away.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to touch on, Brian. So thank you for that. I don't think there's enough talk about the mental health of a dialysis patient. And that's one thing that I try to do when I do go to dialysis centers now as a recipient. Mm-hmm. I try to speak about that part of it with the techs and the nurses at the dialysis centers, because I think that's like a key piece of it. I mean, imagine, you're a patient and you're sitting in that chair. You are tied down. You cannot move.
Oh, right.
Okay. You cannot move. You cannot get up. You cannot, eat, whatever it is that you need to do. You can't do for that 3.5 hours, 4 hours, whatever it is that you're locked into that chair. Right. And that's a lot of time to sit there and watch everything that is going around you. For instance, in my dialysis center, we had about 20 chairs and they were filled. Right. And to watch and see the different things that are happening around you, I was blessed. I did not have many incidents. I mean, we've all had incidents, especially with blood pressure dropping, which I felt in an instant. Right. But watching others, unfortunately, go into cardiac arrest, and you're watching it because you are literally sitting across from them.
Right, and it's happening in front of you, and it's happening during something that you're doing at that moment.
Yes, and it definitely, it leaves a huge impact on you, and 3.5 hours, 4 hours is a lot of time to sit and think.
Yeah.
Watch what's going on. You look at someone who may be a little bit older than you, you're like, oh my gosh, could this be me in 5 years and 10 years? I'm still
on dialysis.
So thank you for letting me talk about that, because I think that's so important. And I think that's something, if the training for dialysis techs and nurses do not go through, I think empathy is a huge part that they should be instructed on.
Absolutely. Because, and it's a sad example, but it's true. Our president, when she was going through dialysis, this person I spoke about now who we're helping, who needs a kidney transplant, and our first adult, it was her mother that was in dialysis with our president. And she said between the time she was in dialysis at one center between 2018 and 2020, when she received her kidney, there were 20 chairs to start, and only 2 people were alive at the end of that period. So I can't imagine you're seeing people disappear one by one, correct, in a lot of instances?
Yeah, unfortunately. And I will have to say there were about 5 of us who were very tight together. I mean, they become a family. Not only the nurses and the techs, the patients become your family, because you're seeing them 3 times a week for however many hours. And they were my family, and they got it. I didn't have to explain my situation. They were there. They were living it and breathing it, the same thing as I was. And to this day, unfortunately, out of the 5 of us, I am the only one that's still here.
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, it's startling, the statistics, but ladies and gentlemen, that's what we want you to know. Some of these truths that go along with being a dialysis patient before getting to the point of receiving the gift of life, which is our goal, whether it's with children or adults. Jean, let's talk a little bit about, now you've gotten through that, and let's talk about receiving the gift of life.
Yeah. So, it took me a while to start sharing my story. I mean, I think you have to be ready to start talking about it. And it took me a while, but once I did, I started talking about it.
Yeah.
And as any dialysis patient knows, when you're on the transplant waiting list, you have to go through a routine of blood work every month. You have to get your numbers checked and all that stuff. So I would be going to a hospital to get my blood work done. And the phlebotomist, who I've been seeing for, I guess it was 2.5 years, 3 years at that point. About 3 years at that point. She knew my story. She, we would talk every time I would go in for my blood work. Yeah. And one day I left after my routine blood work, and she ran into one of her coworkers, whose name is Pat. And she was a nurse there for 40 years. And
Okay.
Pat just happened to be telling her about this little boy who was on the news and how he was pleading for a kidney for his dad. And she had always wanted to donate her kidney. She just felt that calling in her heart. Being a nurse, of course, she's a very giving person.
Right.
And she tried to donate to one of her patients years ago. That didn't work out for various reasons. And then she sees this little boy in the news and she says, oh my gosh, maybe that's a sign. I should start testing for the father.
Right.
As you can imagine, the little boy was pleading on the news. Many people came forward and
Yep. As
they
with
found
our
3
kids.
people who were matches, so they did not need Pat at that time.
Okay.
So Pat was sharing the story with my phlebotomist, and my phlebotomist is like, well, my patient Jean, she's on kidney dialysis. She needs a kidney. Would you
Right.
consider donating your kidney to her? And she says, I have 2 kidneys. Absolutely.
Oh
My
my.
phlebotomist calls me and she says, you're not going to believe this. I
Yeah.
ran into my friend Pat. She works with me, all that. She says, she's considering donating her kidney to you. You need to call her. Now,
Mhm.
imagine I get this phone call on my voicemail and I'm like, this cannot be real. I
Right.
don't know. What would I even say to her? I have no idea.
Yeah.
So it took me a couple of days. Honestly, I needed to get the courage to talk to her because I had no clue what to say to her.
Yeah.
And I was on dialysis. I'm plugged into the machine and I call her. And I have to tell you, as soon as I heard her voice,
You broke down. Yeah.
I knew
I understand.
she had my kidney. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was amazing. I asked her so many questions and I said, out of everything I have to ask you, I have one main question is, why would you, a total stranger, donate your kidney to me? I said, you don't even know me.
Right.
She says, I've been a nurse for 40 years. Out of everything that I've seen my patients go through, watching someone on dialysis living off of a machine is this is the hardest thing for me to see. I have 2 kidneys. I only need 1 kidney.
Yeah.
I just want to give back. And when she said that, I raised my other hand and I said, you know what? If this works out, I don't even know how to thank you. So the wonderful thing about even the bonus thing to this is that she wanted to meet me and she wanted to go through the process together, which, a lot of altruistic donors do not, they
Absolutely.
do their
A
testing.
lot of altruistic donors never meet.
They
Right.
want to stay separate. And
Yep.
again, I didn't even understand about altruistic donation back then.
Right.
She wanted to go through the process together, which was amazing. So, we had our ups and downs. And I will tell you, she was very, very proactive. She was every day, she was on that phone talking to the transplant coordinator. Okay, how did this come out? How did this test come up? What's my next step? Because
Right.
she couldn't ask anything about me and I couldn't ask anything about
Think about
her.
her because of HIPAA. Yep.
2 totally separate, yeah. But
Yeah.
she and I, we kept in touch with each other. We communicated with each other because this was a journey that we were both going on together.
Right.
And then, through all the ups and downs and everything, and we met each other, and it was interesting because we kind of looked like each other. We met each other at the hospital after I was getting a test done or something,
Yeah.
and it was just a connection from that moment on. And then it was the end of May, I believe it was, of 2019, and I'm on my way to work. I pull into the parking lot, and I get a call from her, and she says, hey, what are you doing on this date? And I'm like, I don't know. What am I doing on this date? She says, well, don't make any plans because I'm a match, and we're going to have her transplant.
Aw.
And I didn't even know what to say. I was just so overwhelmed, full of emotion, and just so
Yeah.
grateful. And we met at the transplant center, and until that moment that she walked in the door for the registration,
Yeah.
that was my aha moment. Because at any time, a donor can change their
Come
mind.
back out. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. And, I wasn't even afraid of that because we were in communication with each other. It was just so surreal that, okay,
That she's
seeing
actually
her
going
walk in
to
the door, that meant this was happening. And we
Excellent.
were cool as a cucumber. Neither of us were nervous or scared. We were
Yeah.
just like, okay, we're good. Let's go. Our families, they were a little bit nervous.
nervous. Yeah.
We were absolutely okay. And we didn't have our surgery until the afternoon. It got delayed, and no big deal. That was all good. And
Right.
when they rolled us into the pre-op, and they had a curtain in between us, and I hear the doctor speaking to her saying, "Are you sure you want to go through with this? You know, are you being bribed? You know,
Right.
you're
Right.
being threatened, anything like that?" And I'm on the other side of the curtain. I'm like, "Hello, I'm right next door." But I appreciate that, up until that moment, until the surgery, they made sure that she was okay with that. And I felt good about that.
Yeah, and I remember going through that my morning after being severed. My recipient and I rode down in a donated limousine together. Only the second time we'd ever
Wonderful.
talked. And going through that night, spending my night alone in the hospital hotel while her and her mom are over and, on the other side. And
Yeah.
yeah, well, but yeah, I totally relate to everything you said.
Yeah.
It's just been a beautiful description of everything you went through.
Yeah.
We're going to take another short commercial break, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll be back to talk about Jean's books right after this commercial, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Hi, we're the Sober Broccoli family.
Silver Broccoli family.
And what's your name?
Thea.
I'm Keith.
And I'm Mallory.
My dad named Keith and dad Mallory.
In December of 2023, Bear had a kidney transplant.
Yeah.
Texas Children's Hospital in Houston, Texas.
Yeah.
And throughout the whole process, Kidneys for Kids was right there alongside us. They helped us make the important connections with the media to get their story out there and ultimately help us find his donor.
And at multiple times, they have helped us with financial assistance during a very difficult time where we were living between multiple cities and racing to go to different doctor's appointments to make sure that he could get his kidney and everything went off without a hitch.
Thank you, Kidneys for Kids. We don't know where we'd be without you.
We love you.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Drive for Life. Again, I'm your host, Brian Martindale, here with Jean Sime. We've been talking about her journey as far as finding a kidney, being a living kidney recipient, and we're going to touch on more of that right now, Jean. Let's just finish on that section. You had just talked about receiving the kidney, and you wanted to lead a little bit more back into that.
Yeah, I wanted to add the part about the operation itself and getting rolled into the surgery room. They separated us into two separate rooms, and the room that they wheeled me into was a very, very small room. And I don't know what I was expecting. I guess I was expecting like a Grey's Anatomy room that had
Right.
big glass viewing area up above. Oh no, this was like a closet. And I'm like, is this where you're going to prep me for the operating room? They're like, oh no. This is the operating room. So I was a little taken back like that. And then, the table was about this wide and this wide. And I'm like, well, they're like, okay, just shimmy over. And I'm like, how are you going to get this onto that? Don't worry about it, Jean.
Don't worry about it.
We'll get you. Yeah. And I hear the doctor, she comes in and she's like, oh, you're going to do great, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm laying there and they're, prepping me and doing whatever they're doing.
Arms out and all that.
I look at the end of the table where my feet are, and I see this silver-looking thing. It looked like a cooler, and it was breathing. It was going up and down, up and down. And I'm like, okay, I just want to ask, what is that? And they're like, well, that is where we're going to put Pat's kidney before we put it into you.
Yeah.
And I said, well, could you please thaw it out before you put it in me? Because, as a dialysis patient, I'm always freezing cold. Well, at that moment, that's when they shut me down. That's when they said, okay, it's sleepy time now. And Pat shared her story with me when she realized that she had thought that we would be in the same room, which obviously we weren't in separate rooms.
Right.
And when she found out that I was in the room next door, she started calling my name. And I didn't hear her, but she said at that moment, that's when they said, okay, sleepy pie to you. So. So it's kind of funny. I thought I'd just share that with you.
Yeah, well, I related in my donor experience when they took me in and put me out and all those things I remember. So I can relate to skinny tea.
Yeah.
But that was just a wonderful story. I'm so glad you're doing so well with this kidney now. and they've been a living testament to receiving the gift of life. Let's start to talk a little bit about, I wanted to talk to you about being an author and how you have used this to give back. So let's start with this book that you were a part of because of organ donation.
Yeah, so that I had the privilege of being asked to be, I think there are 25 authors in that one. That's the first book of Brenda's Because of Organ Donation series.
Yes.
And it was a wonderful way to document down my story, my journey, and Pat's journey as well.
Right.
And I was just blessed to be amongst so many amazing recipients and donors and donor families, and so many of them are friends with me as of even still today, and still part of their social media. And when I get to go to the different states, I try to meet up with them and try to see them, and they're so inspiring, and everyone's story is different. And again, just writing about it, it was so surreal. Speaking about it and sharing your story, that's so important. But like having the honor and the privilege of having your story actually documented in this book, it's a privilege.
Yes.
Yeah, it really is a privilege, and I was honored.
Yeah. And it's just wonderful, this whole book, ladies and gentlemen. The whole series here by Brenda Cortez, and Jean Sime has participated in more than just this. But you'll definitely want to get this series, and we'll have the links at the end as far as how to get that. And then how to get the next book, which goes along with our organization, Kidneys for Kids, and children needing kidney transplants. Howell is thankful for kidney donation. I love the book already. Tell us all about it.
Well, as Brenda had shared with you, that was something that many children's hospitals were looking for, something for kids, but also their families, to educate them about living donation. And I think it's really important because, it's a very simple book that we have, although there are some bigger words that we do have a glossary at the end of it to help explain, especially for the parents, which is so important. But we wanted it, I was blessed to have her ask me to join her. I always wanted to do a children's book, and this was a perfect opportunity. And having the experience as a recipient who had a living donor, I was able to definitely, put a lot of input, share some of my own personal aspects of it in the book. And if you look at the book, there's a lot of personal things that I've added in there that Brenda was kind enough to let me do. Like the little girl's name is Jeannie. We created her together. I worked with the illustrator to design her. She has blonde hair, blue eyes. There's a lot of little Easter eggs in that book, if you didn't know, exist. And that's really, from my input as well as Brenda's input. So the book is dedicated to my sister. My sister, we made the character Vivian. That was my sister's name as well. And we dedicated the book to her. Yeah, so it's a very lighthearted book, but it's very, very much needed, especially for children and their parents, to educate them. And
absolutely is.
Every children's hospital should have it.
Yeah, and you're going to be a part of that because you're the co-author. And during my Driving for Life trip this summer, this book, again, is going to be presented to 31 different transplant hospitals across the country. And we'll have the link to purchase this, because if you purchase this, ladies and gentlemen, and donate it back, that will be one of the signed copies from these authors that go to these transplant hospitals. And our authors, you and Brenda, and then Andrea Wiseman for her book, are going to be participating in some of these hospital interviews. You and I are going to meet this summer.
Yes.
And it's just a great connection. But you're so right that these children have needed a book like this. And for me to take it to hospitals and have all of them have it now available for their pediatric patients and their families, I think it's just a wonderful thing. And the whole series is so informative for children, the way every book is written. So thank you so much for being a participant in that. Let's talk a little bit about, too, now next year, we're both going to be connected to something in Denver, Colorado. Tell us about that.
Yes. So Transplant Games for America, for those who have not participated, I suggest at least once in your lifetime, please just go. Even if you don't, if you're not a participant,
Right.
go to check it out. I participated for the first time in well, it would have been 2020. Unfortunately, that was COVID that happened. It was supposed to be in New Jersey at the Meadowlands, but
Right.
unfortunately,
Right.
we did not have that for the right reason. In 2022, I participated in the San Diego Games. Amazing, amazing, amazing. I participated as an athlete. I did a couple of different activities. Got a
I
couple
was going to
of
ask you.
yeah,
What
a
were your
couple
events?
of back then, I think I did cornhole. I think I only did one. I think I only did cornhole.
Oh, okay.
But in 2024 in Alabama, Pat joined me. My donor joined me, which was a whole different experience
Oh, yeah.
doing this with her
Oh, that
because,
would be awesome.
yeah, I mean, you know what? So many recipients, unfortunately, never met their donor. And I have the privilege of having a living donor. And I said to Pat, this is a once in a lifetime thing. We need to do this for all recipients. We need to do this together. And it was unbelievable. And I wanted to show you one of the medals.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, we Pat and I both participated in. I did cornhole, darts, trivia, Texas Hold'em. That was funny. I got a silver in that. I had no clue what I was doing, but it was awesome. But you know, it's not about the medals at all.
Right.
It's great. I'm on Team Liberty. Here we are,
Yep.
Team Liberty.
I'm on Team Michigan.
Okay, awesome. Yes,
Yeah.
and Team Liberty is New Jersey, parts of New York, parts of Connecticut. Amazing team that we have. And again, I suggest everybody, if you have the opportunity and you can go, please go. And it's not about the medals, it's about community. It's about
exactly.
And you meet and hear so many stories from all the participants, all the people that are there, all the families that are there. That's what you take away. It's not the medal. It's the community that you're building.
Yeah, and we're both going to meet there again in 2026.
Yes, looking
We're
forward
both
to
going to be participants. In fact, I'm going to be your competition. So the event.
Are you? Okay.
Oh, yeah. I
All
think
right.
I'm extending myself to golf. And I can't remember. I think we have basketball.
Okay.
Yeah, so at 63, I'm still lucky to, I run around with the energy of a 35-year-old. That's something I use, when I'm talking to recruit living kidney donors for children is the way I felt. I'm 12 years in. My recipient's 12 years in. She's 23, and she was 10. And I talk about the safety, of the transplant. And it's so good to have somebody like you on the other end telling about everything because you worried about that for your donor. You found out how safe it was. You've seen how successful it's been. You're the recipient of new life. And just a great example of what living kidney donation can do. Any thoughts that, to end our interview today, I'm going to give the links here at the end for the books of how people can purchase them. But anything else you'd like to add to that?
I would just like to say my donor was 67 when she donated. So that's one main thing that I forgot to mention.
Right.
There is, if you think you're too old to be a living donor, don't. Please talk to the transplant hospital, transplant coordinator. They each have different guidelines. It's not just about your age, it's about your overall health as well. So please, I encourage you. And if anything you get out of all of these interviews that are being done, you see how living donors can live a normal life and thrive, just like recipients.
Absolutely.
We have this foreign object in our body, but we can thrive and not just survive.
Yeah, and we run pretty well on one kidney.
Yeah, and I would say also for those on dialysis and that are waiting on the transplant list, if you can, please be proactive and search for a living donor. We have social media now. There are support groups out there who can help you, your family and friends. Just be proactive. You can reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to point you in the right direction. Yep. You have to be your own best advocate.
Yep.
No one else is going to advocate for you more than you.
Yeah.
So educate yourself and just do the best that you can. But I know you're sick, But if you have that little energy, that little boost of energy, do it. And you don't have to do it alone. You have a team, you have your family, your friends, you have this community who's there backing you to help you and support you. Please, just when you're ready, you have to be ready and share your story. Share your story no matter where you go. Get a button that says, donate life waiting.
Yep.
Oh, what does that button mean? Oh, I'm waiting for my kidney transplant. Oh, that's interesting. My Aunt Sally, she had a kidney transplant. You'd be surprised how many people have a connection to organ donation, but no one talks about it unless you bring it up. So
Right. And I grabbed the wrong jacket this morning because usually I have Donate Life Living Donor on here, and that starts a conversation right there.
And,
you're so
with
right.
myself, I shared my story. My donor came as a ripple effect from me sharing my story with my phlebotomist and her sharing my story with Pat. So, just share it with whomever, because someone is always listening. That's my theory.
Yeah, and what I use in my story is my recipient and I hadn't met, and we ended up living 4 blocks apart.
Oh, my.
So I tell people, when we're talking about this for children and adults, your living kidney donor could literally be around the corner. It's just a matter of them hearing your story.
Yes.
So constantly talking. And I want the audience to know that Jean is going to be doing some wonderful PSAs for us. And I'd like to think that you come aboard as an ambassador at some point for Kidneys for Kids, because we do work with adults too. You're such an excellent representative of what you've gone through and the journey between kidney disease and receiving a kidney. So thank you so much.
Very grateful and blessed and grateful for my donor. I might not be here today, but and the amazing community that we have. I've met so many amazing friends that are my family, and I'm just so grateful to be a part of it.
Yep, as am I. Jean Sime, I'm sorry. Thank you so much for joining me today on another episode of Driving for Life. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining, and tune in again next week for another episode of Drive for Life.